Good morning, everyone.
Dobro jutro.
Dobro jutro. So, good morning to all the excellencies in the audience, dear friends, dear guests. I would first like to say what an excitement, and I'm thrilled to be here. What a great honor to follow after the speech of Nikica, Mojsovska-Blaževski, and Michael Chklamovski. So this is amazing to have a moment, and in history there is no moment like the present. And we are all here to follow the steps of a great vision and to create that vision. They say the best way to have a great future is to invent it. And I feel that we are all responsible for inventing and creating the future of Macedonia. So with this, we prepared our panel, which is building on the vision. Nikica talked about our vision from Macedonia 2025, the vision for accelerated growth. And in this panel, we will continue to talk about that vision. And it is my very great pleasure and honor to have as panelists Mike Zafirovski and John Deblasio. Let me first talk a little bit about the concept of this panel and introduce the panelists. We will, as objectives for this panel, we want to first of all inspire and motivate change and priority in Macedonia and the region. Also, we will discuss key priorities and the pathway to economic growth, highlighting strong aspects of the region and opportunities for Macedonia. And then we'll talk about how to boost commitment to regional economic prosperity, leveraging the new trends in the global economy, as well as EU accession. So my panelists, if I introduce them properly, will take hours to introduce. But let me quickly give an overview of their background. First of all, Mike Zafirovski, I don't think he needs an introduction in Macedonia. He's everyone's favorite. And the first thing, you always need a position, right? Let me first say that the first thing I know about Mike is that he's a philanthropist. He's first a philanthropist, and then a leader, and then everything else. He's the chairman, the founder, and president of ZAF Group. And this is a family office engaged in operating, investing, and advisory activities. The operating activities include acquiring well-run family businesses and intention of owning in perpetuity. So this is very, very important. Currently, the two platform companies are ACP Creative IT, a solutions provider, and APCO Systems. In the past, Mike Zafirovski was at the helm of many companies, many Fortune 500 companies such as Nortel, Motorola, GE, and others. And to me, it is just amazing how a very smart young person went on into the big world and created a future for himself. It is also very important to me that Mike is very involved in many activities. First of all, he's a co-founder of Macedonia 2025. but also is involved in things like the Special Olympics and also faith-based ministries. So a fully global and versatile activities in Mike's life. And I'm very grateful, especially for Macedonia 2025, because it is a very important organization for the country. Without that, without further ado, then I'll introduce John Deblasio. John is the chairman and founder of DT Global, and this is an institute which he founded in 2019 and successfully merged development transformations and the international development arm of AIECOM, as well as chairman of Community Global Services. John is a graduate of the US Military Academy at West Point, and he served 21 years in active and reserve service. He retired as lieutenant colonel in the US Army Reserve's Civil Affairs branch in 2011. He holds degrees from the University of South Carolina, Masters of International Business Studies program, and he also completed studies at the School of Advanced Military Studies at Fort Leavenworth. He also serves on the board of directors of the Chicago Council of Global Affairs, Illinois Joining Forces Foundations, and many others. And DT Global, as you will hear, is very active around the world in many countries, helping many countries to accelerate their own growth and development. So with this, I would like to, first of all, start with a few questions on Slido, if we have those lined up. Or we can do it in the middle of the panel. So can you see the questions?
No, but I think we know them.
Okay, I can't see the questions. So there are going to be 4 questions. And for these 4 questions, please let us know what you think. Maybe I'll get up to see the answers.
You can just ask us, right?
Yeah.
Plan B.
Plan B. So we first asked, what do you think are the top sectors in the Macedonian economy? And the interesting thing is, whoever I asked in the last few days had a different answer. And it's interesting what people think, but definitely the top sector in Macedonia, as you can see, is the pharmaceutical industry. And then we wanted to ask, what should be the future sectors for the Macedonian economy, where we added AI and IT.
Wow.
Because it's not one of the top 3, and it is definitely one of the fastest growing and biggest growing economy sector in the world. So now we have in the answers definitely the ambition, and this is going to 59%, to add artificial intelligence and information technologies. Great, thank you for everyone who answered. And then the next question is how long do we think it will take, or how long do we want, because we do want to create that future, how long do we think it will take for EU accession? 1 year, 2 years, 3+ years? And I think the answer overwhelmingly is 3+ years. Okay, and the last question is our ambition for growth. Each one of us is poised and is able to add to the economic growth of the country. And as we talked about our vision for accelerated growth, we do want to grow at a rate 5% plus. I know that some of the neighboring countries are in that ballpark. I think as of yesterday, Serbia is at 4.6% growth. So I think we have the 5% as overwhelming answer, but I'm very glad to see that there are more ambitious people in the audience. So thank you so much for this, for these answers. This gives us a little bit of an information about the pulse of the audience and pulse of the country. So with this, I would like to then ask my panelists, I would like to ask Mike for keynote interventions. So Mike, would you describe more about the vision of accelerated growth, as well as talk about why we thought this is such an important topic and why was it so important to come up with the vision? Also outline the main elements of this vision, which Nikita touched upon in her opening speech, as well as discuss the measures and what are the non-negotiables for Macedonia 2025 board, what we advocate for, and then how we will support the implementation of this vision.
Благодарам, Nevenka. Dobro utro na site. It is such a pleasure to be back in Skopje. Didn't realize I lost my voice, but what a joy to be back in Skopje. And what a great way to start. Michael, you've done a great job as a chairman the last 3 years. And I cannot imagine having a better CEO for not-for-profit than Nikita, so I really want to congratulate and thank both of you. I also want to say, John Deblasio, we have one thing in common. John and I have one thing in common. We're both General Electric alums. But I wish we had another thing in common. John actually is part of his military service. He was a member of the armed force. He was a member of the Army Rangers. So if you know the Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, they're part of the most elite, most strenuous, most extensive training programs. That's part of John's background. And since 2019, he's fully devoted himself to provide insights and action-oriented solutions to some of the most challenging parts in the world, including very specifically to the Balkans. This is his third visit to Macedonia, first time coming to the summit, and I know he's going to be working very closely with Macedonia 2025. So John, thank you for being here. Again, good friend from Chicago. Nevenka asked me 3 things: why, what, and how on this one vision for accelerated growth. And I'm going to start with the why. I mean, on one hand, it's very simple. All of us, I certainly feel, as a very proud Macedonian. The ambition for Macedonia 25 was always to help build a stronger nation. And remind everyone we're not politically aligned. There have been many successes in the world, people that are left-leaning or right-leaning, where actually the country, the economy, and the citizens were progressing well. And conversely, in many countries all over the world, where progress was not made, whether you are quote-unquote conservative or liberal. I certainly believe that a strong, democratic, and independent Macedonia should be a great result for the citizens, for the region, for Europe, and the world. So I think that's a big part of the motivation of why it exists and what we want to do. We've accomplished quite a bit in the last 13 years. I mean, no one articulates that better than Nikita, all the things which we've done. Very proud of it. At the same time, we're not nearly where we want to be. I mean, I wrote a couple of things down. Polarization in the country is very high. It's not unusual. Many parts of the world is the same thing, but we probably can afford it the least. If you are at the level where we are economically and quality of, if you will, of the GDP growth, it is that much more important for us to really be moving forward. Economic growth is low. We're experiencing brain drain. There's a disillusionment among the population. So again, this is not meant to be an inspirational or demotivational topics, but unless you really are facing reality, it's going to really challenge to be moving forward. I, for one, do not believe it has to be that way. Actually, I'm convinced it must not be that way. Our country is at an inflection point. We just need to stabilize, and we need to be moving forward. So hopefully there's the explanation on the why. In the what, I mean, I'll just repeat the things that Nikita had said. With a long and hard, we try to keep it rather direct and simple, but includes only 3 items. 0 tolerance for corruption through transparency, merit system, and meritocracy. I mean, corruption is a cancer in any society. If it's in a developing world, it provides wrong role modeling for the young people. And I'm actually thrilled that actually the full board, including local CEOs, are comfortable stating the obvious. You cannot speak with anyone addressing corruption being so significant, but for us to actually say this as an organization, I believe it's a major milestone. Second, commitment to at least 5% growth. I mean, a few people made the comment that says, Mike, do you know we've been growing only 1-2% a year? Yes, we have been. We can all see where we are. So I know there'll be discussions of how do we get there. I cannot wait for that discussion. And third, agile and efficient government through rapid digitization, but also rapid accession to EU. I mean, those are the imperatives. And how do we get there? I mean, I just want to make a comment. It's going to take a village. Macedonia 2025 can play a part, a constructive part, but it's only going to be a part. But I can also make some really specific comments on behalf of the full board, 4 specific things. I believe we can be a very effective lobbying EU, United States, and other neighboring countries to drive the kind of progress and agreements that Macedonia needs. Second, we'll be supporting the digitization efforts. As Nikita said, we're going to take a major responsibility in the digital transformation of small and mid-sized businesses. Third, we're going to hire, part of it as a result of the funds which we raised in the gala last year, 2 senior fellows focusing on growth and on corruption-free society. And last, we're going to be using our vast network of diaspora to really double down our efforts to really build a stronger nation. So again, it's urgent, time is right now, and I cannot tell you how both excited I am, while at the same time really facing the reality that's facing our beloved country.
Thank you, Mike. This was really very insightful. So how do we now turn this vision to reality? I will ask John.
Well,
yes.
First off, thank you very much for having me, Mike. One of the interesting things, DT Global is an organization that works in 70 different countries on factors of improving societies around the world. So we get a very good view of comparative dynamics in different parts of the world. One of the things that I mentioned to Mike is, you may not realize, but I think Macedonia 2025, this is my own personal observation, is in the very best of class of diaspora organizations. There are many diaspora organizations. This is, if not the best, one of the best in the world. And I think when you look back in your perspective of what you've done here, Mike, and bringing together the diaspora from a relatively small country in a way that's very, very progressive for the country, you've really had a great impact. It's hard to do this because diaspora, when they leave the country, leave a lot of that behind. The ethnic diversity takes on a new characteristic in the countries in which they move. So motivating that diaspora is very difficult. So what you've done here is really remarkable, and I hope you can appreciate that. I'd like to just very quickly, Bartel Marcu is our country manager here. Bartel works in the communities around North Macedonia to help build civil society and local governance. That's the work we do here in Macedonia. We work across the Balkans in different factors. So I'd like to just lean into a few of the comments here. First, EU accession and the development of ecosystems. You know, the survey around what sectors matter most and the role of Macedonia 2025 in creating those. In Kosovo, we work on an economic development program that's tied together with a foreign direct investment program, and I'll use that as a case. The selection of the different industries and the reflection on the diaspora and their ability to fund those industries was really a case of chemistry and intentional creation of molecules to build an ecosystem. And that reflected on the study of the capabilities of the diaspora as well as the economic factors in the country. They chose ICT, which you've also looked at here, prefab material and building construction, which has become a very strong sector for them, and then also food. Now, why they chose those had to do a lot with the reflection of the diaspora and how they could support those businesses. That's led to economic growth in these ecosystems through seed investment capital, along with the combination of the country building the regulatory environment for debt and equity investments, which then allows those industries to mature to the point where there are mergers, acquisitions, and growth capital to allow them to become much more relevant on the world stage. That can happen right here too. That can happen right here too. And it happens a bit with science in the direction of the chemistry and a little bit with the combustion of the catalytic productivity of people like you here in Macedonia 2025. And so I hope you can, in these 2 days, begin to form those ecosystems which will develop into growth. The other part of the conversation, EU accession. Now, I want to factor in a little bit of my background here as a national security professional. You know, the moment right now is at hand. The past had been the EU was about economic and cultural factors. Now the EU is about national security for Europe and the United States. NATO has the portfolio of national security, quite obviously, and Macedonia, not North Macedonia, long ago acceded into that, achieving half of your original objective. But EU accession was never seen as a national security priority. Because of Ukraine, that has changed. Because of Ukraine, the focus of the EU and accelerating accession among those 8 countries which are moving through the process has become much more of an imperative. And making it a national security imperative should help to accelerate that. Now, there's no question 3+ years is the answer to the question of how long it will take. However, I think when you look at the comparative politics of Ukrainian accession with North Macedonian accession and Albanian accession and the vetoes that are holding it up, we have a time here where this could accelerate very quickly. Encouragingly, both the EU and the United States government are investing heavily in moving those processes forward in all 8 of these countries. So I see that as a factor which kind of right time, right place. Now we need the right person. And the election here and the politics, which I don't want to get too deep into, has a role in that. Strangely, I've, in my mind, come to the logic that the way these elections play out adds to the urgency to address the disconnect between the hope of the EU and the youth of this country. And so perhaps we'll see more emphasis on the North Macedonian assessment portfolio or accession portfolio because of this. So thank you very much again for having me, Mike. That's my stage set. I hope it's hopeful enough. I see being here in Skopje and in the Balkans as a lifelong project and something that I'm very proud to participate in.
I should also add, I think it's going to be important to have the time it's going to take to become an accession candidate versus becoming part of the EU. And I think the first part to actually accelerate that process, hopefully take much less than 3 years. Hopefully that's going to be a matter of months. And then to actually go through the official process to go through the various qualification criteria.
Yeah, so I think the technical side of this is the relief of the political veto will definitely not take 3 years. What would take perhaps a little bit more time is the technical accession. But once you're past that, that can accelerate. That's important. Yeah.
Thanks.
So thank you, John. I think this was very broad but very strategic overview from your side and your participation in this panel. And thank you for all your work that you're doing in this region. It's very, very important to have that outside-in perspective on the ground all the time in your capacity as a consultant. So the next question from me is to Mike. So this is now becoming, coming down to more details in the vision for accelerated growth, because we'd like to know what are the most significant challenges that you foresee. We talked about the why and the what and the how, but now we'd like to know what are the most significant challenges and how do you advocate to open the aperture a little bit, da ga otvorime objektivot in Macedonian, so that we can have more sustained strategic development. What should be the key strategic goals for North Macedonia for the next decade, and how these align with the international best practices, and this is including those that are advocated by the EU. So where would you start?
I will try to make this simpler. It has to be a growth imperative. It is a state of mind, and if you put it as an ambition, I think that's going to drive many actions. Corruption, very close second, but I'll go back on the growth, comment. There's a formula that predicts how long it's going to take to double the standard of living. You take 70, you divide by the growth rate, and that tells you how long it's going to take the current standard of living. Presumably we're not happy where we are today. If you grow 1%, where we have in the last 3 years, it's going to take 70 years to double. If you grow 2%, there's going to be 35 years. If you grow 5, I think it's going to be only 14. So that is the mindset. It's not going to be any think tank, scholar, or Macedonia 2025 to be able to drive that sort of a growth. But if there is the commitment that we're going to grow, forces all sort of other activities. There's a very famous business consultant, Peter Drucker, passed away a couple of years ago. I mean, I love his approach. He would always ask, what is the opportunity or the problem we're trying to solve? If you're a leader, then the question is, what are you going to do to set the tone, and what responsibilities are you going to take? Then how you communicate the responsibilities, how you delegate, then you follow up, follow up, follow up. I mean, business is not that complicated. Achieving economic goals is not that complicated. Quite often, we overcomplicate things. That's why I love sports. If you play sports, if you play soccer, objective to score more goals than your team, or not to give up and to give up less. I mean, really, it's that simple. And I think we have grossly, grossly overcomplicated that. In previous years, when we had Singapore, the president of the Economic Development Board gave a wonderful presentation. In the 1960s and 1970s, Singapore is the poorest country in the world. So low-cost manufacturing, in 50 years, they became the wealthiest country in the world. So that's what's Asia that's far away, Greece. I mean, Greece was the laughing stock 10, 15 years ago. They've been growing 5% plus in the last 4 years. But the prime minister is getting rave reviews from all over. Serbia, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, they said, well, we wish we had organizations like Macedonia 2025. I wish we had an organization that is attracting foreign investment. They've been growing 5% for the last 3 years. So you can go many, many other examples. Again, we do not have either the time or, frankly, done the in-depth analysis. But I do know if you set a target high, then all of a sudden wonderful things happen. Corruption. We used to be 60th, 70th in the world, not very good. We moved it to 110th, so obviously that's even worse. We've came down to 75th or 80th. You cannot speak with a person, high level, low level, without saying corruption is a major problem. Well, why not say we want to be the top 20 countries in the world? It's not only let's prosecute the people from the previous administration, but culture change through all levels of the country to say why the right level of behavior is good for yourself, for your family, for your neighborhood, for the country. Now, I'll just give you another sports example. Again, I feel like I'm playing a handball. It's pretty warm here, but I'm very, very passionate. I went to the handball game. And I guess I said it last night as well. I mean, we lost by 7 goals against Faroe Islands in the away game. We came to play here. We knew we had to win by 8, or we're not going to make it to the World Championships. The place was packed. I mean, there's people kept yelling, Macedonia, Macedonia. Wonderful MC getting the crowd ready to go. I mean, for a while there were a couple of bad calls. It's almost like you can see the sentiment. It's almost like, oh, EU is against us, US is against us. So somehow all these bad things are going to happen to us. But the crowd kept cheering. The coach kept making the right changes. You have people actually wiping the floors. If somebody is perspiring to make sure there's the right atmosphere. It was magical. Again, you know you're behind. You can't say, well, something, we're not going to make it. And at the end, it was a celebration of a lifetime. I mean, that is the kind of an opportunity we have, and I would just say growth and corruption. You do those things, people will be coming back into the country as opposed to leaving the country. Again, I can go for a long time, but I think this is, again, to say 5% minimum and to really attack corruption, put some targets in. And the government, I think, is going to get support from all the parties, certainly from Macedonia 2025, and I believe from the business community.
To add on, I love the sports analogy. Behind that coach is a system, and it's a foundational system, how that team plays, right? And underneath this society as a system, the inherited system that North Macedonia has is very similar to many other systems that were communist-era systems. And they tend to be highly centralized, highly driven by personalities in these systems. Breaking up those systems is very difficult. When the constitutions were formed post-communism, they honored this centralization. And in a small society like North Macedonia, it isn't apparent that decentralization should be an objective. So one of the things we work on is this idea of decentralization within the North Macedonian concept. The other part of this is this, there's a chimera, this long view of something that's really false. You can never achieve it. Anti-corruption, right? Anti-corruption is a goal in itself. However, it's never achievable. Governments always need revenue, and they always have regulation, and therefore you're always going to have something called corruption. It's really about efficiency and effectiveness, transparency and openness, and managing it in a way which is aligned with the interests of the people to the extent the voters get a chance to weigh in. That's democracy. So you're never going to get rid of corruption. The goal is to have it as transparent and open and effective as possible in your governance. That ties in with this digitization initiative, and it also ties in with leadership. So there's two components of that. The first is taking world-class digitization technology and applying it in local communities and governance. And the second is building leaders of character in their communities. So one thing I'm going to do, inspired by your leadership, is contribute to leadership development here. And Mike, and we've talked about making a commitment to a several-year commitment to Macedonia 2025 to fund scholarship for leaders in their communities to come with your ZAF scholarships and work to improve that capacity. And so we'll do that as part of this. But I feel very strongly, you know, that it's in the communities. That's where change occurs.
Related to that, I wanted to ask you, John, in your experience in the 70+ countries around the world, can you give us some examples of this? We need some tangible examples.
Oh, great. India. If you look at India, India had very, very high corruption, still does reputationally, and because it has layered bureaucracy of regulation, they took their customs and they focused very narrowly on customs and changing the way customs were managed. And what they did was they gave bonuses to customs officers for collecting revenue, essentially taking the power of their ability to obtain extra money for expediting under the table and bringing it into transparency and openness. There's 1,000 examples of how permitting is done locally, how zoning is done locally for development projects. All of these are all examples where you focus on transparency and alignment of interests, and you come up with an acceptable way to manage corruption, right? Corruption is about efficiency, transparency, openness, and alignment of interests. That's the way you effectively change corruption, and you build it into the system in a way which the voters say, that's acceptable. We can work within that, to pay expediting fees, to do things like that. And so the way the Indians did it was they took their customs officers and they turned them into revenue generators.
Okay, that's amazing, and that leads me on to my next question. Fantastic example, so thank you. So my next question actually blends with one of the questions from the audience. And it's in Macedonian. Kako mislite da ја подобрите економијата во Република Македонија? And this is following also on how, in your experience from ZAF Group and other businesses that you've run, Mike, what is the most essential lessons that you would like to impart?
I mean, the first one is that to be able to grow the economy, some investments are required in infrastructure. So government does play a very important role. I mean, one small example, speaking with a colleague yesterday, I mean, the gray economy in Macedonia is 33% percentages. If it's based on the EU average of 19, they provide, I heard, 450 million of additional tax revenues. So one hand, if you will, eliminating, reducing corruption, not paying taxes is is a form of a corruption. On the other hand, is to really have a growth orientation. The government can help attract foreign investment, but really it's the business community. We've had some wonderful examples. Quite often we do not celebrate enough of those. Both it's small companies or larger companies. Obviously I'm looking at Živko Mokajatov and what Alkaloid is doing. But I went to visit Coastal last week. I mean, 1,300 employees. They we invested $80 million into the Macedonian economy. You go through that factory. It is just amazing. Competes with any auto parts manufacturer in the world. What Borjan is doing with John Samethi. Went to the Skopsko Pivara yesterday. So there's a number of really excellent companies. We just need to accelerate the growth of those companies, including a major emphasis on exports. Each one of those has, obviously the Chamber of Commerce needs to play a role in the companies. But I would just go back to the view of simply to prioritize growth. Encourage, celebrate, expect it. That on its own, I think, is going to provide a major, major impetus for the kind of a growth this country needs to move up in our standard of living, if you will.
Thank you, John. This is really amazing. And of course, for the next question, I would like to now go from the economy and how do we plan to help the economic environment in Macedonia to a little bit of the international relations, and how do you see Macedonia in this more global sense, especially in the region? What is the role of the stability and international cooperation position of Macedonia in the region? So this is a
yeah, I mean, I tried to address it a little bit in the sense of the look at the national security imperative to bring those 8 countries who are, some would say, in the Russian sphere of influence into the framework of Western democracies in the EU. One thing I would say is that there is a pernicious effort to divide the Balkans in their societal makeup. When I was in Tirana, I reflected that looking forward from 1990 onward, when you're inheriting a country from Enver Hoxha versus Marshal Tito, is a different perspective. The idea of Yugoslavia here gives the perspective of history a much better shine, almost mythological. And the Albanians have that in a reverse. So everything looks great from Tirana, but from here it looks like we were glorious in the past, and we've lost that. And the perspective is really important. Building on that future, I think, choosing to look at the media and the way that information is provided and understanding it in a way which it doesn't allow the society to divide, but tries to bring it together about this future view is really important. Because you can't move back. You got to move forward, always forward. Control what you can control and have faith in the rest.
Okay, thank you. And like one sentence closing a remark and wish from you, Mike, for the audience in Macedonia.
I'll just reiterate what Nikica has said. I think both Michael and Nikica provide a great platform. Lots of accomplishments can be shared by many people, Macedonia 2025 included. Government can point to many things, but we're in a situation right now that there's a clear acknowledgement that so much more is and must be accomplished, and that's why preparing the one vision for accelerated growth is so imperative. And I appeal to all the people in this room. I know this is being recorded and televised, to really put country first, above and beyond any personal or political ambitions. And I know Macedonians going from here, the same environment, going in other environments, they perform at 2, 3, 4x of their current capabilities. So I have always thought the opportunities for a more prosperous, brighter future are here. For the first time ever, I'm seeing the acknowledgement and the passion. It's not a despair, but it's more from a we're better than this. We must be moving forward. And I think this new political changes right now provides an opportunity to move forward. And I should just acknowledge one last one. It wasn't just the last administration. I mean, I would just argue the last 10 years, the last few years of the previous governments. It's not that one government is going to come, everything is going to change. I mean, the problems and the opportunities are greater than that. I think the acknowledgement is there. And whoever is watching and listening, if you will, you can count on Macedonia 2025, the Chamber of Commerce, and many other people to be a productive and constructive part of moving the country forward. And I would just say the future is now. So that's my perspective.
John?
I would turn it back to you all. Mike said country first. Civil society has a critical role. Macedonia 2025 is a civil society organization at its core. That's what it is. It's the influence of the diaspora to drive progress in the country of North Macedonia. And embracing that role within civil society here in North Macedonia, but in your own actions, that's how catalytic change happens. So I think within the institutions, you look to change in a gradual way, but that only happens with the push of civil society, and I look forward to partnering with Macedonia 2025 in the future to help make that happen.
Thank you for these amazing messages. Thank you. Thank you. This was an amazing panel, and I would like to just say future is for us to create it in Macedonia, and I'd like us to focus on the economic growth, 5+%. We can do it. We're capable. We've been capable, and I think we can succeed. We'd like to focus on transparency and zero tolerance for corruption, and also to support all of our activities, investments in leadership education, general education, competitiveness, and also we as stakeholders to collaborate towards the shared vision for prosperity of Macedonia. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.